I was deported after serving a 20-year sentence out of a 29 to life prison term. I remember that when I first was released, I had just gotten out of prison and they sent me to a federal facility waiting for deportation. And during this period, it was a 2-week period. I remember it being the longest time of my life. 2 weeks. I just finished doing 20 years. And now with 2 weeks, it seems like I was never going to get out. These 2 weeks seemed forever. I wanted to sign anything just to get out. I didn't care. I just wanted to get out. I didn't care if I had to fight the case over there. I just wanted to come home, regardless if it was Mexico. So eventually I got out, and I remember when I was going through the process of being released from the ICE facility. It's an ICE facility. I remember being deported into Mexico, walking through the walkway and then into the hallway. They gave me a phone call so I could get a hold of my family, which was my sister at the time. She was waiting for me already in Mexico alongside my wife's aunt. And when I was about to walk out, I remember all these scary stories that I have heard from people in detention center, that there was people in Tijuana, bad people who were involved in organized crime, that they were like taking people who, like me, who were just getting out of prison, who fit the same profile, and snatching them up and taking them to work for them in these organizations. And I was scared. I was kind of scared. I was worried, So I remember walking out, and I was looking around as I'm walking down this hallway, this path, to meet up with my sister. And that was the first thing that I recall was the smell. Mexico smells different. TJ smells different. And I'm walking out, and everything looks like old and murky. It looks weird. It's almost like if it has a yellow filter or something like that. Things look older than, and they don't look green, and there's no lush greeneries and stuff like that. So it added to my worry a little, as I was already worried about how am I going to live here? What's it going to be like? What am I going to do? How am I going to survive here? I did have my wife. I did have my wife's aunt who helped me through the whole process. But it was daunting. It was kind of scary at the time. I remember coming out. And then we finally jumped into my sister's car. I was full of emotion. I was happy. I was elated. I just imagine after 20 years, like, now I'm free. At the same time, scared, because now I really have freedom. And throughout all these years in prison, I didn't have freedom. I didn't know. Everything was managed for me. So now I was like on my own. We ended up going to finally eat some food. And then we went to the beach in Rosarito. And for the first time in all these years, I got to see the beach. It was just beautiful. It's weird after you don't see the beach for so long. But reality starts to set in, and things start to change. The environment, the culture, you have to adapt. And it was a struggle. It wasn't easy. I ain't gonna lie. It was hard, through this process. So I want to welcome you to my channel, Deported But Not Defeated. My name is Mopac. I'm a tattoo artist here in Tijuana. I've been tattooing for almost 10 years here in Tijuana. I've always tattooed, even in prison, but professionally out here in Tijuana, I've been a tattoo artist. I'm on my way actually to an appointment, so you're gonna ride with me. So some of the hurdles and struggles that I came across living in Mexico, living in Tijuana, were kind of the culture, because you get used to your whole life. You live in the United States, and then you come over here, and things are way different. Things are, the way that everything runs is different. It's kind of like everything's slower. We're like 10 to 15 years behind in technology and infrastructure. It's developing. The city is developing. Things are developing. But when I got here, it was a little harder, because it wasn't so accustomed to receiving so many deported people, and now it's common. But in those days, one of the things that it was hard for me to do when I first got out of here was get all my documentation in order. It's a long process. And trying to look for work here in Mexico, which was hard because you kind of face, you know, a lot of hurdles where, because you didn't grow up right here, that you don't have certain paperwork, you don't have schooling and stuff to prove that you were raised here, and everything you've done was in the United States, and now you have to like show where you went to school, show where you grew up, and all these things that they ask for right here. So that was difficult for me. But one of the things that was really a hurdle for me at the time was being accustomed to being around so many people, and people in particularly that are not your friends. In prison, you're kind of around the same kind of group, and now here you have to like adjust to people. You have to get used to their ways, and everybody has the right to act a certain way, think a certain way, you know, as opposed to being in jail where you're forced to think in a certain manner. But out here, you just have to adapt to the way people are, you know. And they don't care if you were in jail for X amount of time. They don't care if you were deported. It doesn't matter to them, you know. So you're not special. You're just some guy who got deported, and now you're like at the bottom of the pond, you know. You're like a small fish with a bunch of big fishes, you know. And that's what it feels like when you first get deported, you know, especially because you don't, at the time Spanish wasn't like it is today, and I'm kind of fluent, but in those days it was really hard for people to recognize that I wasn't from here, and at the same time it was hard for me to, you know, get accepted in certain situations, or they would take advantage of me because they thought that I was coming from the United States and they wanted to charge me more. But for the most part, you know, I can honestly say that Mexico has been good to me. And if you really like hustle, Mexico is a great place to live in. You know, I know Tijuana's ugly, and most of the people just know Tijuana, but there's actually places here in Mexico that are really beautiful. They're amazing, and some places are extremely rich. I've been to a lot of places because I travel a lot. You know, me and my wife like to travel, and we've been to so many places in Mexico. And I've gotten to witness the differences of Tijuana and the rest of Mexico. You know, I think Tijuana and the northern part of Baja California is kind of ugly, or the northern part of Mexico is kind of ugly as opposed to the southern part, which is really beautiful. But it's our home, and this is what I love, and this is what has received me. And living here, even though at first it was scary, and we were trying to adapt to this, like we got so used to it that this is home now. We don't know anything different. Let me tell you a story. I remember when I first got out, I was all tattooed, and because we had heard all these stories about organizations picking people up like me, my wife would always tell me to roll down my sleeves so I wouldn't show my tattoos and stand out. Well, this is what somebody had told us here, you know, like not to show my tattoos right here while I was in Mexico. But you know, nothing ever happened. Eventually, now tattooing, look, I'm a tattooer, eventually tattooing is part of culture here. Everybody's tatted. Everybody wants to get tattooed. I think one of the things that I want to bring up is that if it wasn't for my wife has been my pillar. She's been there forever now, and she was with me throughout some of my prison term. And if it wasn't for her, none of this would have been possible. She's been everything to me. She's helped me out through everything and guided me and pushed me, because you know, you coming out to a new country, you could be scared and you don't know what to do, you know. So she's pushed me to like find something to do, start a business, and I have, you know, I've actually, aside from tattooing, I used to install garage doors as well. So on a final note, this channel is going to be basically a little bit of a vlog type showcase what life is about in Tijuana, and my determination and mindset to make it from scratch, from being deported after 20 years in prison and finding a way to overcome all these hardships and difficulties, being away from the United States and being alone in a country by myself, you know, with my wife, and of course somewhat the life of a tattooer here in Tijuana, and what it took for me to get where I am, basically being a business owner and being blessed and owning a home, which is very difficult to do. So please don't forget to follow, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.